And there's some tribalism around doctrine, like there's proof of work versus proof of stake. There's questions about distribution. There's questions about use and utility. And there's just some people that are radically misinformed, and they take a really harsh step forward, and they use language that you'd never use in a commercial context. The CEO of Microsoft doesn't say, "Oh, Tim Cook is a criminal." It doesn't happen this way. They of course say, "Oh, well, the iPhone is not very good," or this or that, or
Hello, and welcome back to the Daily Crypto. Today, we have Charles Hoskinson as he shares his take on the causes of tribalism and how he had to pass through tribalistic accusations on his latest creation, Cardano. The American entrepreneur also spoke about tribalism in the crypto space. His views center on answering the questions in the minds of some of us regarding the causes of tribalism in the space and if it is possible to evade it completely. Before getting into the video, if you love the content we make on this channel, do not forget to like and subscribe for more interesting topics in the crypto space. Let's dive in.
And there's some tribalism around doctrine, like there's proof of work versus proof of stake. There's questions about distribution. There's questions about use and utility. And there's just some people that are radically misinformed, and they take a really harsh step forward, and they use language that you'd never use in a commercial context. The CEO of Microsoft doesn't say, "Oh, Tim Cook is a criminal." It doesn't happen this way. They of course say, "Oh, well, the iPhone is not very good," or this or that, and that's commercial puffery. But to go beyond that and say someone is a criminal or is dishonest, meanwhile, you have the VC distributions. Meanwhile, you have the collapse of Terra. Meanwhile, you have all these things that happen that are very much predatory to very innocent people. And this behavior is pervasive throughout the industry, but apparently that seems to be excused in many circles. But then when you go and write 140 research papers, you're the worst scammer in the entire world. So I don't understand it. I really don't. And we just live it, we deal with it, and you can't let it bother you. You have to move on.
One would think that the crypto market has enough space for everyone to work and, most importantly, work together. However, Charles Hoskinson believes that the crypto space is interesting but filled with drama and hitches, just like the political space. He went on to emphasize the growth of the Cardano ecosystem and the technology world at large. He believes that it is not unusual in a space such as the crypto market to have many people who support, understand, and promote the work, and have others criticize and stand against it. According to him, these two categories of people are necessary for normal coexistence in the crypto world.
We've built this incredible community. There's 3.5 million people in the Cardano ecosystem now, and we had a community event the day we came here. 1,200 people showed up for it. Some people came from Australia and Singapore, and the level of passion and enthusiasm was just overwhelming. So I think it works probably on both sides, that if you can't have one side without the other. So if you have a lot of people that really love what you do and what you build and the things you think about, you'll have a lot of people, for some reason, they go beyond dislike and they go into active hate or name calling or accusations, and it's bizarre. And I always ask, well, what is a scam? We wrote 140 papers. We've been doing this as an ecosystem for over 6 years. We've delivered Byron and Shelley and Alonzo, and you might disagree with what we do. You might think what we do is not commercializable or it's the wrong strategy, but where exactly is the scam? Explain that to me. And they never do. They never can, at least in a reasonable way.
It is not unusual to witness certain forms of anonymous trolling in the media space, but certain individuals make it a personal attack. According to Charles Hoskinson, some individuals come as far as telling it to your face and acting out their negativity, sometimes resulting in harassment and physical assaults. It would be rather a retrospective to come together and work out the chains, as this would be a huge development for the crypto market and bring profitable results to each player in the crypto space.
I mean, it's like, when do we ever have one of anything? One religion, one language, one culture, one country. It's like, it's never happened. You don't have one of anything. It's this concept of one chain to rule them all. You can't, because there are design trade-offs. There's different people in control. There's different philosophies about control. There's different scale. And some things are very well suited of different monetary policies. So some, for example, like Bitcoin and Cardano, they have deflationary monetary policies, fixed price, fixed supply, excuse me. Others, they have inflationary monetary policies, persistent linear inflation, demurrage in some cases. And so if you have different monetary policies, different designers, different design purposes, and they cover different demands, it's absurd to say that somehow, despite all of that, it's all going to just collapse down into one chain. Usually they say it's Bitcoin. That's the Team Orange, and everything else is a shitcoin. So no, it's got to be multi-chain. So what matters more is the connecting tissue, the standards for interoperability. So how do you move users and value and state and information between the chains? Because that is what's going to allow us to consumerize and get billions of users into the system. And it's also what's going to allow us to eventually merge with, connect to the legacy banking system. They're upgrading everything. It's called open banking. You'll see standards like ISO 222 and so forth. So they're trying very hard to create a better communication infrastructure for the world banking system. Where's our ISO 222 for our industry?
The important thing is the connecting factor between the crypto chains to enable users' movement and value between the chains. The only major problem that may disrupt bringing this process into actualization is tribalism, which in Hoskinson's view is totally unhealthy and largely unnecessary.
I know, and so maybe that's tribalism. There's somebody who's a Bitcoin maximalist or an ETH maximalist, who knows? But just little stuff like that. It's like there's an open standard. It's obviously their decision as a business, but there's Cardano has GraphQL API, REST API. We integrated Cardano Rosetta, which is Coinbase listing API. So very easy to deal with it, very easy to work with it. But it just doesn't happen. In other cases, companies are embracing us very strongly. For example, Ledger just announced ADA on Ledger Live, and they actually did that completely with the Cardano community. They never talked to me. They went to Catalyst, and they dealt with everyday people and Cardano in a very decentralized way. So it's also a mixed bag. Some people are very collaborative and they work well, and others, it's just bizarre what decisions they make, who to embrace, who not to embrace, or what to do. And they really love spiking the football. Anytime someone has any misery, they just get so happy about it and say, oh yeah, we told you so, and so forth. It's bizarre.
Charles Hoskinson believes a different technology is needed to make up a one-chain standard in the crypto market. However, considering the difference in deflation and inflation policies of various crypto players like Bitcoin, Cardano, and the rest, it would be impossible to consider a one-chain standard for all of them.
You can't have that. You can't have one team financially win if a standard is adopted. That's not how standards work. You need different technology. So I think that's where the industry needs to go. And unfortunately, the tribalism does tend to hurt that. It prevents people from talking to each other or creates unnecessarily latency. For some reason, I don't understand why Gemini hasn't listed ADA. I don't know. Everybody else has. I think there's more than 200 exchanges. They listed, I think, Terra before. They listed ADA. They've been always friendly to me. I talk to them.
They list dog coins.
The major idea behind the creation of cryptocurrencies is to cut off the excesses and nepotism of the banking sector, which, according to Hoskinson, is now the situation of things in the crypto space. He clearly expressed his displeasure at this. However, and as a result of this, Hoskinson is also of the opinion that some situations are, however, unavoidable in the crypto space. Situations like hacking software upgrades and the likes. These are seen as the risks in the industry, and although bizarre, it is considered a necessary evil.
You will get hacked at some point in some capacity. There's going to be a screwed up upgrade. Something will happen. It's software. And they're humans, and humans are fallible. Software can be broken. Now, there are things you can do to mitigate and manage risk and prevent them from becoming cascading, and there are things you can do to try to prevent risk. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be some risk, regardless of how much preparation that you do. So there's good fun. Every now and then you kind of rib people a bit, and spiking the ball usually is in that mindset. But then there's just downright malicious and mean things. For example, with the Lummis bill, there were a lot of Bitcoin maximalists who reached out, like I think Jimmy Sung was one, but there were others to that office and said, oh, you need to make everything that's proof of stake a security and ban it. Why? Why would you devastate the industry like this? First off, half of all crypto value is in proof of stake systems now. Less than half is in proof of work systems. So you're just going to cleave off half the space and put it into a really weird regulatory space that no one knows how to comply with, just because Team Orange can't compete fairly. This is bizarre when you see this type of behavior, but they're actively doing this. They're actively saying this and advocating this, and that's harmful for the industry as a whole, and it has to stop. Just because you can't win fair doesn't mean you get to go to the government and try to get them to win for you. That's the whole reason we created cryptocurrencies as an industry, because we were pretty tired of the banking industry doing that to us.
A legislative measure and the inclusion of the government, for instance, a push for decentralization may seem like a way out. Still, according to Charles Hoskinson, legislative measures are insufficient to curb some of these irregularities.
Exactly. Yeah, and they change too. Like Ethereum's going from proof of work to proof of stake. So you carve out a legislative exemption for Ethereum. So does that mean regardless of what Ethereum does and what they change to, they're always a commodity? Does that make any sense? It's like, what if they decide that the Vitalik is just going to control the entire ledger tomorrow? And they fork to that. Well, obviously, it's not going to happen, but it just gives you a thought experiment of why would you give a legislative pass to, regardless of a property or a test? I've been a big advocate for things like a decentralization index. I've been a big advocate for things like a consumer bill of rights or these types of things, because those are philosophical and foundational, and in many cases you can use them as the basis for enforcement and measurement. So the case of like sufficiently decentralized, well, what does that mean? We have this notion, but it's like the definition of obscenity. So the Amish in Pennsylvania are going to have a very different definition than Pride in San Francisco. I mean, this is where we're at, and yet it's the same notion, obscenity. So analogously, when you look at decentralization, there's over 10,000 crypto projects. So, what's your definition of decentralization? What's mine? What's Vitalik's? We're all going to have different notions. But in the absence of that, you can't make policy. You can't say, well, that's the litmus test for moving from a security to a commodity. You have to provide some more clarity above and beyond that.
Hoskinson also believes that decentralization may, however, not be such a bad idea if it is properly structured and certain doubts surrounding it are fixed. People can recognize their rights within reach of the legislation in the crypto space. In recent times, many people in the crypto industry have been clamoring for the involvement of institutions in the crypto space, with the mindset that the patronage of these institutions may largely increase the output of the space and stress its legitimacy. However, one major factor that would not put the crypto space in disarray before the government gets involved and regulations are put into place is for all major players in the crypto industry to put away their differences, come together, and create a regulation or some form of regulatory body to put things in check before the emergence of government interference. The most important factor we pointed out earlier is putting a stop to tribalism and getting everyone together. Charles Hoskinson is also of this opinion, and according to him, it is the only way forward to bringing everyone to a recognition of the future of crypto. He expanded his view on this.
I think you start on some basic principles that don't economically value one person over another. So we really do need a definition of decentralization. That should be something, regardless if you're Ethereum or Bitcoin or otherwise, you have the conversation. And so from our part, we'll create objective, neutral, academic labs that kind of act as an aggregation point and try to encourage as many blockchain projects as possible to collaborate with those labs. So that's one. Standards are another component. So for example, smart contract standards for the verification of smart contracts, and these things, $10.5 billion of hacks last year. Maybe we should do a better job at securing smart contracts and protocol design and so forth. Again, that gets people talking to each other, and what's good for us is good for them. It's good for everybody inside the industry. So that basic trust and those basic relationships, I think, are really going to help. Then you also need to have an agreement that there are problems in the industry, and we have to be intellectually honest about those problems. Just yesterday, I saw a letter that 1,500 scientists signed that they sent to the Congress saying, just because it's innovative doesn't mean you shouldn't regulate it. 1,500, that's not a small group of scientists sending an open letter to Congress. So you see these types of things and you say to yourself, okay, we have to be intellectually honest about that. And then as an industry, we have to hold to higher standards.
Speaking of decentralization of the crypto market, What is your view on the best method that investors may adopt in the crypto space before the emergence of the government-enforced regulations? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. This is The Daily Crypto. See you in our next video.